But the interesting thing about Auckland was, and New Zealand more generally, they turned down the investment property incentives significantly in New Zealand. And as a result of that, property prices did come down as interest rates went up. And the other thing that happened was that we had more first-time buyers entering the property market in New Zealand than they've had for years. So it shows you that the lever that you pull with regard to investment property has a very significant impact on the whole market. Now we're seeing property prices in New Zealand begin to move up a little. And in fact, the Reserve Bank in New Zealand is expecting property prices to move higher from this point. So there's a really interesting object lesson there about the way that the property market works. And by the way, just so we're clear, 33 to 35% of mortgages in Australia are for investment properties. In the UK, the Bank of England got worried when 16% of mortgages were for investment property, and they actually throttled back on how much you could borrow and those sorts of things. So we have got an investment property sector which is a lot bigger than almost any other market in the world. And you're right insofar that there's significant demand for property in some areas. But if I give you an example of the Illawarra, where I was before I came over here, I sold a property in the Illawarra last March, and prices had slipped a little bit. Prices have continued to slip in that particular area. So it is not true to say universally prices are going up all over the country. If you look at some units in some areas, for example, in Tasmania, prices are sliding as well. If you look at units in and around Sydney or even Brisbane, there's more demand for them. Why? Because of this migration thrust that we've got. So we've got these two countervailing forces, very high migration, probably stupidly high migration. Where are they all going to go? What's it going to do to the roads and everything in the area where they are? We also tell you something else that's interesting. In my surveys, the number of first generation Australians and recent migrants who in the rental sector and they're now in rental stress has gone through the roof. It's the highest sector of all. So we've got a lot of people who've moved into the country and they're struggling with affordability, but in the rental sector, let alone buying a property. So we've got a property sector that is still out of kilter. And I would argue that the lessons from Auckland is you've got to actually tame the investment sector if you want to have a more broad move. But then, like I said earlier on, is there any intention in Australia to take property prices down? Probably not. Why? Because financial stability is the key question. Our banks are so leveraged into property, and if property prices started to fall, if default started to rise, they will, but not maybe that much, then that could put significant pressure on financial stability. And so it's only a question of interest rates, recession risk, and financial stability. All those things are in play at the moment, which is why this is a very complex environment. It's probably the most complex environment that I've ever seen.